Don't know if you're aware of that.
Welcome to Oxford Business College London campus for our first ever blended event in which we blend the Zoom with
I think everybody else here is a student.
In this case, the common room.
Right, isn't it?
We're here with our friends from University for Creative Arts and Yoho, your office, home office.
I recognise
and we're talking about virtual or classroom. What is the future of higher education? I'm joined on the panel here in our London campus by my two colleagues from OBC, Munoz and Shifan Razick. And then on my right, our special guest lecturer from University for Creative Arts, Toyin Laketu, who lectures in business management and creative industries. So, joining us on Zoom is our invited audience of students, academics, and experts. Can you give us a wave, please, on Zoom so we know that you can hear us? The first national lockdown was in March last year, and we all rushed to go online and in-person teaching and online delivery. And this was done at great speed, and despite those
David, if you can hear us,
it all seems to have gone
I don't think anybody
well. We've done our own survey
at
Oxford Business College, and we just wanted to start with some of the findings. We asked over 500 students what their preferences were between virtual learning, blended learning and classroom learning, and overwhelmingly virtual learning was the preferred option. Even after the pandemic, people want to see virtual learning continue. 83% of respondents preferred the virtual or blended. Only a small percentage of learners would like to see a return to entirely classroom-based learning. And even when we asked people to choose between types of blended learning, the strong preference was mainly for online. Shifan is with me. He's a data analyst expert, lectures on data insights. Shifan, what was your perspective on the findings?
Yes, as you mentioned, David, we collected data from 1,500. Rather not 1,500, 500. So it's a cross-section from the whole college. And as you mentioned, 83% for virtual and 17% for classroom. So the important point here is many learners will opt for online learning or virtual learning even after the pandemic. Because in one of the questions asked about why do you prefer online learning? So is it because of the health concern? So many did not mention that health concern. They mentioned about convenience, flexibility, and it gives control to their life. Not only for students, even for the faculty, the lecturers as well. And it can save costs, definitely, and it's good for sustainability, and especially the centennials, the new generation, people born after 2000. They are mainly concerned about sustainability. So it is a very important point. And another interesting report came in February this year, and whatever the report informed, it is consistent with our findings. So they clearly informed.
That was the government report.
The government report, Office for Students. Yeah. So, and one of the key points here is students have better technical skills than the lecturers. So it clearly informs they have 50%. They have better skills, and some lecturers a bit struggling here. Another interesting point is it's going to open new markets for UK institutions, UK universities, because you can attract students from different parts of the world. Here we can see some students are from different parts of the world, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. One of our students joining us is Hussain, all the way from Tunis. Can you hear us, Hussain? I hope so.
Yes, Hussain is a famous example. He's from Tunisia, and he's joining from there, when he's studying online.
We can't hear you at the moment, Hussain. We'll just get that technology sorted out. So in the meantime, thank you, Shifan. I'm going to turn to Toyin. Toyin, what's your experience been of virtual learning during the pandemic and over the last year?
My experience of virtual learning has been a massive learning curve. Let's just start there. And it's been a massive journey, and it's been really exciting and really fun. It's, as I say, it's been big learnings, having to kind of shut down on the 16th of March, and then the following week kind of going online with the students. But it's kind of created an opportunity to be much more creative in terms of how we teach students. You know, kind of falling in with some of the bindings around flexibility, but also kind of creating, you know, and also kind of using lots of different tools online, you know, to kind of keep students engaged, and finding new ways of kind of, you know, kind of creating conversations and doing workshops and so forth. So yeah, it's been really good, you know, and as I say, it's been a massive learning curve for me.
Shifan was saying the government report says that students find it easier to use the technology than lecturers and academics. What's been your experience at the university for Creative Arts?
Yes, I think there have been plenty of times when I've kind of, you know, been in a lecture and it's kind of like my student, you know, and again, I'm very open with my students. It's kind of like, you know what, I don't know everything, guys, so please help me out here. And there's been many times when my students are kind of like, oh, you forgot to press record, or the Padlet board's not working, we can't add any of our content on it. So, you know, we've kind of been working and learning together through all of this, you know, and it's been great, yeah.
So it's been, and Diana, what's been your experience so far from Oxford Business College point of view of virtual learning?
I totally agree with our colleague, with our guest speaker here. And it's been a very interesting journey for me as well, because it's also been very new for me. You know, I'm not used to teaching online, so it's nearly been a year or more than a year that I've been teaching online. And I was very surprised to see that, because I have I'm quite an extrovert, and I can maintain that personality, you know, virtually, which is quite interesting. And of course, I have great students. A lot of them are on the screen.
They're online.
And yes, they're fantastic.
Yeah.
And it's been wonderful. And also, I find that it also encourages, because the tutor's not always on top of you like they are in the classroom. So it does encourage independent learning. You know, a lot of independent learning, and it makes them actually, you know, be prepared for the big bad world out there. So it's been also very creative, you know, like Toyin said, so you can use different types of tools. And, you know, we go into breakout rooms, we do oral presentations. So it's been wonderful. I've learnt at the same pace that they're learning. And it's been a wonderful experience. And I'm quite happy to carry on that way, or to, you know, venture into a blended world. You know, I think that the options that we will have will be very interesting. Yeah.
Well, thanks for that, Diana. I mean, one of the reasons why we're doing this event and
yes.
why we did the survey was coming from you, the students who are on the Zoom screen at the moment. Sandun, I don't know whether you can hear me and whether I can ask a question to you, because you were very keen that we listen to the views of students when thinking ahead to life after the lockdown and after COVID. What's your view about the experience of virtual learning, and what would you like to see happen after September?
Yes, David, thank you for taking me on board and asking me the question first. Let's put...
we're not picking you up at the moment, Sandun, but I'm sure technologically we'll have a solution to that in a moment. I'm going to come back to you in a moment, Sandun. And I'll ask meanwhile Shifan for his experiences from a personal capacity.
Yeah, the students' perspective, they prefer online, virtually. You know, I'm not only talking about the numbers, based on the interaction. You know, so whenever I have a lesson, I ask indirectly, you know, what is your perspective? So are you ready for it? Okay, so at least, you know, if they can't do completely virtual, they want a blended approach. And why blended approach is important? For some lessons, virtual is more effective. So we have to rethink our perspective, because the other day I was teaching statistical analysis and how to use different polling system like SurveyMonkey, Google Docs and Jot forms. So I was able to clearly explain all three platforms, and then I asked them to create links, and then I asked them to share the links through Zoom chat feature. So all the learners participated, they clicked the link, and they completed the survey. So everything happened in the real time. So this will not happen in complete face-to-face lessons.
Is that your experience as well, Toyin? Some things work really well virtually and other things work better in the classroom?
Yeah, and I think things like, thinking about being more efficient, things like doing tutorials, I think in a blended or a virtual learning environment, I think that's something that potentially might stay in the virtual learning environment due to the fact that, students, you maybe spent inside 15 minutes to half an hour with a student doing a one-to-one, and why would trying to get students to come to campus to do that versus kind of doing it online. It means that at the moment I'm kind of seeing most probably around about 20 students a day doing one-to-one tutorials online, whereas if I was doing it on campus and doing it in a face-to-face kind of environment, I would not get through that many students. So I think from that kind of perspective it's been great, definitely.
Let's try and hook up with Sandun again. Sandun, I'm afraid you're the guinea pig at the moment. We're still trying to get this to work. So let me ask you again, if we can hear from you. Do you think we're losing the social aspect if we when we're teaching virtually, Toyin?
From kind of feedback that I've had from some of my students, they feel slightly disconnected from the whole kind of experience of teaching and being at university, and the fact that as I think we've all got this bugbear about no one turning on their cameras, so we don't know who's behind these cameras, and and I think that in itself is kind of one of the experiences that she was in touch with.
That's something that you feel strongly about. A number of don't engage cameras. That makes it very challenging.
I mean, I know that a lot of them would like to come into the college and meet me and meet my colleagues and just get to know each other. They can see each other on camera, but because not all the cameras are on, they can't all see each other. But they do. I mean, some of them are wonderful at engagement, and others, I think that they would probably benefit from coming into the college physically, but they do actually like to have this online experience, whereby they are enhancing many other skills at the same time. But I think that the social aspect is there. However, I think going back to what we had talked about before, with an age difference, so like the more mature or the more, what was the word, David, that we were going to use? Non-traditional students instead of mature students who are trying to balance and combine work, family, studies. For them, it is much more comfortable to actually, learn online. The online aspect, the virtual aspect, is much more attractive than for others who have more free time, maybe, to come into the college or the campus and and have their classes there. But I think that we're definitely, the ideal situation would be to offer different kinds of options.
If you look at the social aspect also, it's not static, it's dynamic, right? So ability to engage online or be participant in a Zoom setting or Skype setting, it's also a part of social setting now, isn't it? So it's not only the face-to-face here, right? So your ability to engage virtually, either as a student or a lecturer or an office worker, it's a social skill now.
Absolutely.
So these skills the learners should learn, because if they go to a job, so they have to collaborate online through Zoom or MS Teams. So we are preparing our learners to that.
Well, one of our experts who I'm hoping to bring in as soon as we sorted out the sound issue, and who's partnered with us on this event, Bryce from Yoho, has had a lot of experience of looking at the world of work, and that's going through the same sort of transition as the world of the student, in the sense that people have been combining home working, and generally it's not been. Sandy, do you want to say something again?
Can't hear.
No, we're not picking up anything at the moment.
I think we should directly speak to them from the Zoom account.
Can you put a speaker or something on?
Just talk to them yourself, David, from your own Zoom account.
Testing. Testing.
Yeah, it's kind of a speaker.
There is a big lag in the voice. I don't know from where.
Okay, Sandra, I'm going to try you again. Sandra, what's been your experience so far of blended of virtual learning?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's clear.
Right, we've got you now.
Yeah.
Can you hear us?
Yes, we can hear you now. Thank
Yeah,
you.
perfect.
We have an event.
We have
a
succeeded with
blended
blended
event. We're celebrating here. Sandra, after all that, you better say something interesting after all that.
Yeah. So let's go back to the point why we started the online training. So for us to come on online, there was a reason behind it.
Who's speaking?
Has that reason fully recovered for us to go back to the classroom? The question is, we are still not 100% sure where to go, what to do, what not to do. So even the government's guidelines wasn't clear. So in that case, as a college or as an institute, is the management ready to put our life on risk? Now we start talking about Indian variant. Now the NHS colleague who work for us, they are getting ready for the third lockdown, which is around the corner. We don't know the statics yet. The only thing is we have to wait and see what to become. Then we go back to the online and see what are the developments we have done. So for example, on a normal day, on the normal life, what will be the class attendance of our any college? Has that attendance ratio been meet up via the online? Are we being successful? Are developments needs to be done? So let's have a comparison. I can talk about my class, HND Group 1.
Yeah.
I can assure you, we have more than 95% attendance throughout our first 3 months, which is very acceptable. Then look at the quality of the learning. We just have completed almost everyone our assessments. So what I can hear, what I got to know, we have quite good results out of this online training. So in a way, we did not have a choice. We put on online to have this learning. As a student perspective, what I need to get my course done in a good way, in a better way, in a safe way. So doing this so far, I am happy. I have saved my money. I'm being very safe indoors. Then I am being very successful because the technology is available for me to use. And whatever I need, I go around me. Do I need to use 3 devices? I have access. Like Mr. I'm talking through before. On the spot, we can use the technology, link, whatever PowerPoints or the Excel sheets or PDF drive. We can use it then and there. But in a normal day at the classroom, will I be able to use that? I will take home and put in a side to use it later. But on this online, actually lecture get me work on that and ask the result just after it. So for me, I find it very productive and it's comfortable and it's resultable. We have proved it through our first session. And the other side, if this training sessions come into the classroom, what will happen? As a college, I believe college need to have good students coming into the college and get the best results. For our students, we need to commit it and get our qualification done. While doing this, we're struggling with our family life, health life, affordability in a way, right? We're grown up adult looking for the option. So what I'm trying to emphasize here, just give us the option to continue the way you have started from and see the results. If the results are not acceptable, let's discuss the other options. If the results are acceptable and the car is driving fine, why we need to change the driver? That's my take on it.
Well, Sandon, thank you very much for that very clear exposition of your experience. And indeed, you're right, attendance and progression has been fantastic during this period. Madalena, I don't know whether you can hear me. Madalena, can you hear me? Can I ask you the same question about your experience of the last year or the last term on virtual learning? I'm not sure whether Madalena can hear.
Good evening, I can hear you.
Oh, yes,
thanks, Adlida.
Good evening, everyone. Well, yeah, I still have the same point as my colleagues. Well, this virus keep us indoors for so long and give us the opportunity to think about many things in the same time. I am still up with the online learning because of so many reasons. The first reason is the safety of my family and my safety as well. Because as we all know, this virus is very dangerous. So I would like to keep continuing the online learning for now until everything will be settled down, until we will know for sure that safe outside, until we will know for sure that it's okay for us to be in schools again, in public, to meet with many persons at the same time. So, and also, as my colleague said earlier, is about the financial position as well, because most of us were living far from the college, and we had the opportunity to save some money on this period of time.
Thanks very much, Madalena. That's very clear as well. Let's just bring in an international perspective, because we did talk about the global aspects, and joining us all the way from Tunis is Hussain, who is one of our students on the University for Creative Arts partnership with OBC program. Hussain, you've been studying entirely online from Tunis. You haven't been able to come to Oxford as we hoped. What's been your experience?
Hello everyone, thank you for the invite. Well, for me personally, it was the only thing that I was concerned is the quality of the learning. But I can see that now doing the course for the past 7 months, I learned a lot. And if you ask me whether if I was able to join you for the classroom experience, or whether if I'm gonna continue virtually, it's gonna be the same, because for me, I'm doing a bachelor in business innovation and management. Most of our work is or studies is being a theoretical side and assignments. But if you ask me if I'm gonna be doing a bachelor in chemistry, or I need access to a laboratory, in that case, yeah, it's gonna be a lot different. Especially with the current technology, there is no visual laboratory. Maybe someday it will be. It's feasible. But it depends. It depends on which bachelor you're doing, which field are you doing. But for me personally, doing the business management innovation, it was perfect. I'm also a business owner, so I have time to focus on my business, my career. I saved a lot of money. So there are a lot of aspects to judge whether the visual or the classroom experience is the one to follow.
Thanks, Hussain. And same question to Ves. Yeah, I think you're much closer to home. Let's bring you in and get your take on this. You're one of Diana's very valued students.
Well, thank you very much for this. My opinion will probably differ from a lot of the guys who are present here, and probably from what you heard from the survey. I've just background. I've been a student before. That was also almost 25 years ago. Although I didn't finish, probably I didn't finish because there was no distant learning then. But what I'm thinking a lot of us are missing at the minute is, and in the last year and a half is the social aspect of being a student. That is basically always has been, and I think it's still valid to say that this is the best 4 or 5, depending on what course you are, years of your life where you socialize with peers, you know, you meet your tutors in face, you can collaborate on projects together. And while technology allows us to do this distantly, I think that the human factor is missing. At least it is for me. I feel that it's a great thing from the whole experience. And but you know, distant learning is not from today. It was like if just to bring in Open University was created years and years ago, and that was one of the options back in the days. I'm talking back in the days, like 20 years since I've been here, to get an educational diploma through Open University. But it was one of them things that it's like getting the diploma while doing else. It wasn't like, and it still feels for me, not something that you're committed to just because you're physically missing from that whole environment.
Yeah,
and
that's a very important point.
If the car is moving, why changing the driver? But how many times you get in a cab and the cab driver will take you the longest way home. When you get out of the car, you think never again. You know, there's other ways you can get to your final destination. And I think it's depriving us as students from something that it is there, it could be there, and although temporarily it's not. But I think looking forward, I can't go back to classroom, to be honest. I can't wait to go back to meet my fellow students. I can't wait to go back and go in a physical library where you can grab a book, you know, you can explore, you can spend a whole day in an academic environment and feel like you are a student.
Thanks very much for putting that view, Ves. Let me bring in one of the experts, Oxford Business College's Head of Academics, Murray Cooper, who's on the screen. Murray, from an academic point of view, what do you think is lost when one's not in the classroom?
Thank you, David, for bringing me in. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, we can, loud and clear.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, so just really very quickly, it's been great to listen to all the comments from the students, and especially hearing positive comments as well about the college and how we've handled this situation. I think the important thing to remember, of course, is that the reason we're doing this is out of necessity. It wasn't a choice. It might become one, and that's, I suppose, part of the debate that we're having now. But what we had to do, we had no choice, but we had to make a virtue out of necessity. And so we had to make the best of it. And I think that's what we've done. But at the same time, I think it's also important that we recognize that there are some drawbacks with this. There might be certain things that you can do online, which, or using the virtual learning platforms that you can't do in the physical classroom. But I think there are also clearly things that you do in the physical classroom which you can't do using a virtual learning platform. So I'll just point out a couple of those things, because I think that's what you brought me here for, Dave. You wanted me to focus on that, in a sense, to be the devil's advocate here, which is fine, because I've been teaching for many, many years. And that I think needs to be said is that the truth is we don't actually yet know. We don't actually yet know for sure how effective the teaching and learning is when we're using virtual learning platforms like this. And the reason for that is because we haven't been able to do any experiments, any empirical tests to see exactly what the difference is between the results of students. And Sander mentioned this, in fact. He's saying, please give us a chance. Let us show that we are attending, we are progressing, and we will achieve. And yes, I think he's right. We need to do those experiments. So we need to have the evidence. But at this time now, all I can do as a teacher with many years' experience is draw from that experience and say what I see are the drawbacks. So I'm just going to point really to the one main issue that I see with many implications. So this issue really is about context. So here I am sitting in my three-dimensional space, staring at a screen, and everybody else is doing the same thing, but we can't share space together. And that does have implications for teaching and learning, I think. So in a classroom, teachers will use a technique called Proxemics, which means they control the space between the person who is speaking and the person they're communicating with. So teachers will walk across the room from one person to another person. And this is a very important way to control student engagement. And we're missing that. So I know that highly motivated students like Sandon clearly is, will make a virtue out of this necessity, will attend every lesson, will switch his video on and be fully engaged. But we can't guarantee that for all our students. And having a technique like a Proxemics, so you can walk across the room, you can go to the back of the class where teachers tell you, generally, you'll find students will go to the back of the class if they want to try and hide away and not engage. So teachers need that tool to be able to walk to the back of the class and peer over the shoulder of a student and get them engaged. So another thing I'll point to, which is part of the same problem, is body language, and in particular, I focus on eye contact. So right now, I'm looking at somebody on the screen, but they don't know I'm looking at them. Yeah, because there is no possibility of genuine eye contact. And contact is, I think, really important to make connections between people, emotionally, psychologically. When I'm teaching, if I look at a student, they look at my eye, then I know that they're paying attention. I know that they're probably engaged and learning. So eye contact, Proxemics, and the third thing I'll mention, the last thing I'll say, is about learning style. Now, I think the students that we've heard from who are happy with this situation, they probably have a learning style. That means that a way that they like to learn, which suits this mode of learning. But there will perhaps be people, and we might have heard from one there who craves social contact with others in the same three-dimensional shared space. We'll have people like Vest, I think is your name, isn't it, Vest, whose learning style may be different, and therefore he needs to have that physical contact. There are well-documented studies on learning style. I'll just focus on one which I think is an issue, and that is kinesthetic learning style. So people who have or tend towards kinesthetic learning style, they really need to interact with their physical environment. They like to touch things, move objects around. They like to stand up and walk across the room. They like to stick Post-it stamps on flip charts, and they learn better that way. And I would go even further and say that there are teachers who are kinesthetic teachers, and they too like to do lots of physical activities in their lessons. So I'm one of them, I have to admit it. I would like students to stand up and mill around the room and put music on and get them to talk to each other at certain times. I like to do drama techniques and role plays and mime. All of these things add more variety to the learning and teaching. Well, and I think they help to make it a broader experience. So I've focused here really on the pedagogical implications, I think, of learning and teaching.
Yeah. Thank you very much for putting that so clearly. And I'm glad you're not an actual devil's advocate, otherwise we'd all be voting for the devil now. But let me just come to an expert in digital learning. Dr. Tony Reeves, who's here with us, who's subject leader for creative education at the University for Creative Arts and a big consultant in digital learning. Tony, how would you respond to that, and what observations would you have about the last year?
Oh, how long have I got?
2 minutes.
I'll be as quick as I can. Really, thank you both. Firstly, thank you for the invitation to participate. And just, Murray, I'm going to respond to you directly because you're talking a lot about pedagogy and really interested in what you're saying. I would actually disagree with quite a lot of it, but again, this is about preferences of opinion. So, I mean, I would say that I'm a pragmatic teacher. So, although my background is technology enhanced learning, I think I always use technology pragmatically, and certainly the teachers that I teach, I very much encourage a pragmatic use of technology. And although I'm a great advocate of teaching online, I love teaching face-to-face as well. So I think there are absolutely advantages to both. I think what we should be doing, though, is not trying to replicate the classroom, and that we should be trying to look at what are the strengths of both modes. So if we can get in the classroom, great, let's do that really well. If we can't, let's do online really well. And if we can get a blend of both, let's make sure that we're doing the best kinds of activities in both environments. I think learning styles for me are controversial because despite a lot of research going into them, there's still a lot of research that proves that or shows that they are perhaps not as prevalent in terms of learning as we may think they are. But I totally take your point about people have different preferences for how they like to engage, and that the important thing is that we provide a range of options for engagement. So it's not just about kinesthetic, it's not just about auditory, it's about having a blend of everything so that we have means of engagement. So I think for me, there's a few things that we need to do. We need to make sure firstly that everyone's got access to the online environment if we are using online stuff, because that's obviously been well documented in terms of problem accessibility. It needs to be inclusive. We need an inclusive research-informed approach to course design, super important. It needs to be grounded in active experiential learning. I think we need to foreground the pedagogy and tell students, explain why we're doing what we're doing and negotiate that where possible. I think there absolutely needs to be accountability for learning in terms of students and teachers knowing why we're doing what we're doing, and so everyone can see the virtues of showing up and turning their cameras on. I think we absolutely need to focus on social learning, and to all the points that have been raised. I think the one thing that we have lost is social learning, and yes, we can't replicate the socialness that we have in a physical classroom, but we shouldn't try. We should try doing it in different ways. So we should really focus on developing blended learning communities. And that, for me, is going to be the secret to successful blended courses as we go forward a few months in the next couple of years. How do we create these communities that blend the online and the on-campus seamlessly? So that's my views there.
Thank you very much indeed, Tony. And just to say that's very interesting to hear both views, and just to say also that Sandon's view is not an isolated one. Just going back to the survey, 83% of Oxford Business College students said that virtual learning is their preferred option. So it's quite a large margin actually, and I'm sure that Sandon would want me to say just to say that. Can I look quickly at a parallel with the world of work and bring in our last expert before I come back to the panel, and that's Grant Price, who's founding director of Yoho, your office, home office. What can we learn from the experience at work, Grant? 'Cause lots of people have been working from home, and I sense that they're not all going to be rushing back to the office.
It's a very interesting question, David, because I probably turn the question on its head, because I think there's a lot that industry can learn from education, simply by virtue of the fact that there's been remote learning, ever since the days of the Open University in the UK. And I gather that access to those type of facilities have also been available from abroad. However, what's come across very clearly from this session is there are some distinct differences. Working and learning different by virtue of the fact that when you're teaching somebody, the ability to gain feedback during that process, as Murray indicated, is absolutely critical. The ability to adjust where you're teaching is so important. The ability to pick up on body language and other cues are really key. But I'd say if there's one thing to learn from industry, it's how to make the most use of available technology wherever possible. The other thing I'd learned from technology is that one solution does not fit all. There is not a uniform movement towards remote working amongst industry. If you look at industry sectors, they're all reacting differently depending on their vested interests. Some sectors are, you've got to come back to business. The financial sector in particular, very concerned about data security, very concerned about open office space sitting on their balance sheets. And If you look at the government's perspective, they're very concerned of the lack of footfall through the retail sector. If you look at those people that are working from home, from an employee's perspective, there's a mix there too. Some people are desperate to get back, they're missing the social interaction, and I think there's some similarities there with what we're hearing from the student cohort. But I think going forward, education can keep an eye on what industry is doing, how it's using technology, earning from that side. But I also think there's quite a lot to be learned the other way around. Students have been disciplined and been working remotely, studying remotely for a lot longer than people have actually been working remotely. It's been technology that's enabled it. And I think students actually can show industry something about the discipline of working remotely, and also in terms of being able to work despite the distractions around them.
Very interesting. And I guess that the experience that students have been through is actually very good preparation for the world of work as it is at the moment.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Grant, for that. Let's come back to the panel. We had some very interesting contributions there. And who would like to pick up on that? I mean, Toyin, what about the social aspect? And Diana, what do you think about that?
I think for the students it's very important. You know, I know that for some of the cohorts I'm teaching across year groups, you know, those who have had that on-campus kind of engagement and kind of built up that sense of community, who've then been shifted to an online, have kind of craved more for having that kind of social interaction, whereas those who are a lot older and maybe kind of going into their final years have not necessarily craved. So I think there is a balance to be kind of struck there in terms of that social interaction. But I think it's also in terms of doing group work, I think that's really important in terms of how we kind of deliver group work either in an online platform or offline. And so there's quite, you know, there's a lot more kind of frictions and kind of, you know, personalities and so forth that you have to kind of contend with and manage in an online environment, which you don't necessarily have in an offline environment. So it's kind of having to spend more time being much more considerate around that when we're doing things like group work online.
Indeed. I mean, Tony Reeves made the very interesting point about blend, that actually we should be looking at blended learning options, the best of online and the best of in place or in person. You know, that maybe in the blended learning there's some very interesting innovations to come, perhaps, in the way that we think about providing both online and in-person experiences. Diana,
and going back to the blended, I mean, there's so much talk going on. It's like a trending topic. But I read somewhere the other day in the BBC article that even pre-recorded sessions are going to come in. So whereby, you know, the lecturer, we can pre-record a module or a lecture that we're going to teach, so that the student actually, you know, can at his or her own pace actually, you know, learn their own way. So we are actually encouraging independent learning, which is very important, because that, you know, in turn in the future will help with their employability skills, will enhance the skills. But also what I wanted to mention, going back to one of the things that Murray said, which was quite interesting, I'm a little bit like the same as Murray. I like to be in a classroom, and I like to, you know, walk up and down the classroom, go right to the back where all the shy people are sitting, trying to hide from me or trying to hide from all the, you know, the classroom mechanics. And I think that you can sort of maybe help them build more confidence. I mean, you can do it virtually as well, there's no doubt. But I think that maybe it's easier, you know, physically to help build a student's confidence, you know, physically. I'm sure that you can, I mean, I've done it also virtually. My students in the beginning were quite shy, now they're sort of very chatty. And I would also like to say that I think it's wonderful, not just our students, but your students and students in general, when they signed up for these courses, you know, they thought they were going to go into the classroom, they thought that they were going to do a typical normal course, and they've ended up to rapidly and very quickly accept this, you know, dramatic and radical change into, you know, having online lessons. So I think that's marvellous from their point of view.
I'd like to just kind of come back on that point about the pre-records, because actually we do a lot of that within UCA. So, you know, so one of the things that we, you know, where we kind of work, you know, it might be that I kind of do a lot of students are asking for pre-records because they're kind of like, we don't want to sit and do a lecture review. Can you can you kind of do a pre-record, but also kind of giving that autonomous and giving that trust and empowerment to students to be able to kind of manage their own kind of learning. But also as a resource for us within, you know, within our faculty is, for example, we might have, we might do a topic on, I don't know, legal and intellectual property rights, and I would kind of do that, but then there'll be another discipline or a different subject group or a different module that's kind of got an element of, you know, legal and trademarking in their module. So it's kind of like, well, actually, rather than doing the module or rather than reteaching it or duplicating effort, we've actually got that content recorded, so we're able to kind of share resources in that kind of way, which also adds to kind of like the student experience, kind of gives them extra information, you know, and also kind of helps them with their kind of managing their self-learning,
time management,
and so forth.
Yeah, I want to add some point, like you mentioned about the BBC article. So in the same article they are mentioning about deciding whether going virtual or classroom based on the learning outcomes. Some learning outcomes are effective virtual, some learning outcomes are effective face to face. And another important point, look at the universities. Obviously we have competitive advantage. We are teaching a business, so we have to look at the strategy here. What is the competitive edge? In terms of contents, you don't have competitive edge here because the same contents many places. But in terms of delivery, there is room. How do you blend? So it can give a kind of a unique advantage for you, how effectively you blend. So that
there are lots of different types
so how do you do it? Kind of a recipe.
A choice of 3. We said you can, if you had a choice of 50-50, virtual or classroom, then we gave them 2 other choices: 90% classroom and 10% virtual. And then the third option was 90% virtual and 10% classroom. And guess what? Most people chose the very last option of those, which was 90% virtual. So I've got to bring in Sandon back, because you were brave enough to start this debate. Sandon, what's your reaction to what you've heard? And let's get you to have the final say.
Yeah, I mean, so I hear the both sides. Then listening to the panel students, what I can see, some students like to come back to the classroom, some students like to be online. So like I said, then the option should be available. If the students need the one-to-one attention or the classroom study pattern, then that particular student can be on that pattern. So the many of us are okay to do this, what we have doing and what we have proved where we are successful, then that option should be available for us to continue. So yes, the social aspect, we all like to be seeing each other, chat each other, talk about and be in person. So I would suggest that session up, beginning of the class, then we socialize, we get to know each other, and also we can have a session at the end, the award ceremony or whatever you call it. So we have that session. So blended, but has to be blended it properly. So don't blend it halfway through, then you lose the rip out of it.
So you're saying, that's a very interesting, like you could have a big get-together at the start of a semester or start of term, a big get-together at the end of semester, and maybe a midway, but the rest of it will be done virtually.
That's 100% accurate. Yeah,
that would be a good idea.
Some scenarios.
Well, I would like to thank everyone for their participation today. We're on a bit of a strict time. I'm sorry I wasn't able to bring everyone in, but I think in conclusion, we started by asking virtual or classroom, and what's clear is that it's not a binary choice like Brexit was. That the future is going to be blended in some way, and as the government themselves have said in their report that Shifan mentioned before, innovation has been forced through the lockdown, and it may lead to positive and lasting change, not just an emergency stopgap, but it does have an important role in the future. And I think from what I've heard today, and what we've heard today, that seems to be a message going forward. And we said exploring blended learning. We're just at the start of that process. And I'd like to thank everyone for participating today. This is not going to be the last word on the subject. It's a very exciting and interesting subject to explore. So thank you to all of you for joining today, either live here in the studio, our panel, live on Zoom and also on Facebook Live. It's our first ever blended event. We've had a few technical issues, but we got through them, just like the spirit of the last year. So thanks very much, everyone, and I wish everyone a very good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, David. Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you very much.
Thank
That was
you.
great.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Thank you, David.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.